World of Warcraft players have been playing this game for almost 20 years, and at this point almost everything is abbreviated. If you're new to WoW, this means it could be impossible to understand what anyone is saying to you, so in this video I'm translating WoW player language back into normal human language. GCD. Global cooldown. Triggered by most abilities, it is shared across most and almost all spells. It prevents you from mashing spells and tries to put casters back on a level playing field with melee. It is distinguished by the clockwise fade that you see on my spells when they are cast. A player might refer to a spell as being off the GCD. This means that it can be used even while global cooldown is in effect, or doesn't cause it itself. A good example of this is Doomwind's for Enhancement Shamans. As you can see, it doesn't get the clockwise timer over it and thus can still be cast. It is worth recognising spells that act in this way, as you may be able to string them into combos with your other cooldowns. Builders and Spenders. Builders and Spenders is one of the main class archetypes in World of Warcraft. A lot of classes work on the Builder-Spender system, meaning you use abilities that gain you a resource and then execute a large ability that spends that resource. For example, Rogues and Cat Druids use smaller abilities to gain combo points, and then use their larger abilities to do more damage based on how many combo points they have. Another good example of a Builder-Spender class would be a Retribution Paladin with their Holy Power, or an Elemental Shaman with their Maelstrom Power. Power and resource types. Every class in WoW has a different power system that helps make it unique. Let's quickly run through them now. Death Knights spend runes to gain runic power for stronger attacks. All Demon Hunters generate fury and then spend it aggressively on abilities. Devourer Demon Hunters collect souls to transform abilities into more powerful ones. Druid power varies by their form. They can have rage like warriors, energy and combo points like rogues, mana like other healers, and astral power for balance, which you build and spend. Evokers use essence to cast their more powerful abilities and spend mana when casting healing spells. Hunters spend focus on more powerful shots and it naturally regenerates over time. Mages have mana but don't really manage it and are more based around cooldowns and abilities, except for arcane mages who generate arcane charges to empower their casts. Monks generate chi through their basic abilities and spend it on stronger techniques. Mistweavers also use mana when they heal. Paladins build up holy power and unleash it on stronger abilities to heal or do damage. They also expend mana when casting healing spells. Priests use mana when casting healing spells in Discipline or Holy. Shadow Priests build up Insanity to cast powerful spells. Rogues spend energy to build up combo points to unleash powerful finishing moves. Elemental Shaman build up Maelstrom to spend on powerful spell. Enhancement Shamans build up stacks of Maelstrom Weapon to instantly cast spells. They all expend mana to cast healing spells. Warlocks harvest soul shards through their basic spells to unleash stronger spells or summon demons. Warriors generate rage by attacking, taking damage, or using certain abilities, which can then be spent on stronger ones. Rotation. Your rotation is the priority order in which you should be casting or using your abilities and spells to get the most damage and healing. Although these days it is a lot more of a priority system and not so much a strict rotation. This is important because some talents and abilities interact with other abilities in certain ways, which means that they should be cast before another one. For example, on Elemental Shaman, when you cast Lava Burst, you gain a buff to your next spell, which means using it before casting a large ability, like Elemental Blast or Tempest, is favoured. Cooldowns. Cooldowns, also sometimes called CDs, can be split into three different categories: damage and healing, survival, and utility. These are abilities that vastly empower your character, or assist others in your group, but cannot be used all the time. In the vast majority of cases, you'll be using your damage cooldowns on cooldown, so that you can get the most use out of them throughout a raid encounter or the dungeon. However, there are certainly some classes that will want to hold cooldowns to make sure they can use them all together. Another good example is Elemental Shaman. Stormkeeper has a 45-second cooldown, whereas Ascendant has a 2-minute cooldown. This means they will desync. What that means is that they will not be up at the same time, so sometimes you will have to hold one to make sure you can use it with the other. Survival cooldowns, usually called defensives, are abilities that will reduce the amount of damage you take for a set period of time. It is most beneficial to use a survival cooldown during periods of high incoming damage. This might be AoE abilities from enemies, or a large attack from a boss at a certain target. Utility cooldowns cover a wide range of effects. They can be things like giving the group or a raid a benefit for a short period of time, such as extra health or movement speed, but they can also be abilities that disrupt enemies, made up by stunning them or moving them around. During a raid boss fight, these abilities might be assigned by the raid leader to help make the fight more manageable. Healing cooldowns are powerful skills that can increase your healing output for a designated amount of time, or they are strong one-off abilities that heal the raid and help you get through periods of increased damage. Again, during raid encounters, it is often the case that these are assigned to certain moments to help get the raid through those tough periods of damage. Buffs and debuffs. A buff is an ability that grants power to a friendly target. This could be a long-lasting class ability that grants stats to the raid or group, or a short-term ability that grants power. Enemies can also grant each other buffs, but these can be removed by purging spells, such as Shaman's Purge or Major Spellsteal. A debuff is an ability that weakens or causes damage to a target. They usually come in certain classes, such as Magic, Poison, Disease Bleeds, or Curses. Specific classes can remove specific types of debuff, and some classes can also debuff enemies with hindrances or damage over time effects. DOT and HOT. A damage over time effect is an ability that places a debuff on a target that causes damage to them over the duration of the debuff. Conversely, a healing over time effect is an ability that causes healing to a target over the duration of the buff. Pandemic Timer. Named after the Warlock talent that introduced this effect originally, Pandemic allows a newly refreshed damage over time effect to carry up to 30% of the max application time onto the new cast. Since Flame Shock lasts 18 seconds and the game will carry the remaining time over, but only up to 30% of the original duration, even if you refresh early, the maximum extra duration you can carry over is 6 seconds. Uptime. Uptime can refer to a few things. Firstly, it can refer to how long over a raid boss or dungeon you were able to keep up a debuff on targets. It can also refer to how much you were able to keep dealing damage to a boss or target during an encounter. Filler. Filler refers to the spell that your class will cast while waiting for more potent abilities to become available, be that waiting for cooldowns or waiting for the power to generate to cast those spells. Proc. A proc refers to an ability that randomly occurs. These usually empower certain spells and abilities, allow them to be cast, or greatly increases their priority. Kick or interrupt. Kick is a quick name for an interrupt, and named after the rogue ability that interrupts targets. These are abilities that stop the casting of an enemy's spell. All damage classes have these. CC. Crowd control refers to abilities that stop enemies from being able to act. Some can even incapacitate an enemy completely, stopping them from joining combat. Others just briefly stop enemies from acting, such as stuns, disorients, and knockbacks. DR. Diminishing returns can refer to two things. Usually it refers to CC abilities becoming less effective against a target when they take multiple back-to-back. This lowers the duration until it reaches 1/16 of the usual and resets after 16 seconds. This means in a dungeon that an enemy will still at least get stunned for a split second if you use an AoE stun and diminishing returns are in effect. However, in player vs player combat, since midnight, a player is completely immune to crowd control categories after 2 casts. This means if you stun them, the third stun you use, they will be immune to. However, this only applies to CC categories, so a different category, i.e. a disorient, would still affect them. It can also refer to stats. When you get a lot of rating for the same stat in WoW, i.e. haste, mastery, versatility, or critical strike, after a certain rating, the amount of percentage increase you receive will be slightly reduced. PI. Power Infusion is a priest utility spell that can be granted to other players, increasing their haste by 20%. Players have been known to go absolutely feral trying to receive it. Grip. Grip refers to the Death Knight ability, Death Grip. It is a unique ability that pulls a target to the Death Knight's position, and it can be incredibly useful on certain boss fights. ABC. ABC refers to the adage, always be casting. It is the cornerstone of dealing damage in WoW. Whenever you are taking part in a raid or dungeon encounter, you should always try to remain using abilities as much as possible. It is often more important to remain casting at all times than to correctly pull off your rotation. You should try to master this and then apply your rotation. M+. Mythic Plus is the endgame timer-based scaling dungeon content. Players will rush to complete a specific dungeon in a set timer. The level of the Mythic Plus defines how much stronger the enemies and bosses become. It rewards endgame loot such as gear or upgrade crests. Meta. Meta refers to whatever classes or strategies are currently considered the strongest. A lot of groups will consider only taking the meta classes for the current season, but at the end of the day, the skill of the player will matter way more in most situations than the class you are playing. Eye level. Item level is the number displayed at the top of a piece of gear and defines how strong that item is. Item levels can be increased by spending crests at a designated vendor. Item levels are also capped depending on the tier of the item: Adventurer, Veteran, Champion, Hero, and Mythic. Your character's item level is an average of all your currently equipped items. Rating. Rating is a number associated to the content that it is related to. It defines how good you are at that specific type of content and often grants rewards when reaching a specified level. You can find it on Mythic Plus, Rated Arena, Rated Battlegrounds, and Solo Shuffle. BIS. Best in Slot refers to an item that when equipped with a specific set of items is your absolute best in that slot and will never be replaced. It is often impossible to achieve your complete BIS set. However, trinkets and jewellery items are often the most important items to gather the BIS versions of, and do not usually change until the end of a season. Well, hopefully World of Warcraft becomes way less intimidating once you understand the language, because honestly, half of learning WoW is just decoding what veteran players are actually talking about. Now that we understand the words, we need to understand how the game itself works. If you found this useful, make sure to hit that like button. It genuinely helps me know whether people want more beginner-focused WoW content like this, and with enough support, I'd love to turn this into a full beginner series. In the next video, we will move beyond terminology and dive into how World of Warcraft actually works, how classes, specs, talents, stats, gearing and loot systems come into play. So if that sounds useful, subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.